Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Value Selling Associates webinar this morning on sales team dynamics. I'm really excited about today's topic because I think it is so relevant in today's selling world. Team selling has become more and more common with the clients that we work with. So I'm curious as to those of you who have joined us this morning, use your chat real quick and share with us, are you a team leader or are you a team member as the reason that you joined here? Let's kind of just get a feel for who we have on here in chat. Team member. I see a lot of team members on here, which to me says that you are part of a group of people that has a collective goal, and we'll really define that in the future. We definitely have some team leaders as well, and I look forward to talking to you this morning about sales team dynamics. So first of all, let me share with you a little bit. My name is Julie Thomas. I'm the president and CEO of Value Selling Associates. We work with companies all over the globe and help their sales organizations improve sales productivity through our proven process of skills, tools, and methodology. Many of you, I can tell, that have joined us are actually from companies that have deployed the value selling framework. So we're thrilled to have you with us here today. As we get in today, I want to give you a couple pieces of information. First of all, if you are interested, please join the conversation. We'd love to hear your comments, whether it's on Twitter, you comment on Facebook or LinkedIn. Share your comments, your observations with us. It's always great to make these interactive. In addition, at the end of today's, not only will I address any questions that you have, but the recording as well as these slides will be made available to you this afternoon from our website, www.valueselling.com. So if you're interested in sharing this or going back and revisiting the content, they will be made available to you. So it's interesting, just this morning, I was having a cup of coffee with somebody who works for a Fortune 225 company. And while he's not in sales, he has a customer-facing role where he is responsible for implementing the solutions this company happens to sell. And they happen to sell hardware and software services into hospitals. And his question to me was this morning, why doesn't sales include us when they're talking to customers? Because we have such deep technical knowledge, we could actually help make sure that the customer is buying the right product. And it was so interesting to me that the perspective of this implementation manager was that sales did not want to involve him. Now, I don't know specifically for this company why they are not involving them, but the general question that was being raised by this implementation specialist is our collective knowledge would make this whole customer engagement experience so much better. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today, how to make your customer experience better through the use of multiple resources in your organization. So some of the topics today are going to be definitely targeted towards those of you that are team leaders or building teams, and others are going to be relevant whether you're a team leader or a team member. But we're really going to talk about today, how do you build an effective team? Why do you build an effective team, and what should you expect from that? We're also going to be looking at who should be on the team, and once they're on the team, what do they do? And talk about how we can coordinate our efforts to be successful in our selling approach. Lastly, we're going to talk about strategies to influence without authority. Often one of the challenges that we have as team leaders or even team members is we need to influence people to take action or do certain things, and we don't have the authority to ask them. So what are some of the tips and tricks that we can do to help do that? We're going to wrap it up with some some overall successful team selling strategies that Value Selling sees our successful clients deploy and stress when they are managing team selling situations. So what is team selling? Well, team selling is an interesting concept because building a team is very different than just pulling together a group. And the difference is that a team is all about getting people focused on the exact same objective. So it's pulling together a group of people, typically representing the same firm, that are together collaboratively trying to grow and increase the revenue in either a specific account or a specific geography. Now, why do we sell in teams? Well, there's lots of different reasons that we want teams. First of all, we may have an elephant of a deal. We may have targeted a specific opportunity that we want to put as much valuable resource on to ensure the probability of success. I was working yesterday with a company that is in the dental business. They actually sell the ability to mass produce customizable dental fixtures, everything from dentures to crowns to bridges, etc. And they were telling us when they are working on a large deal, they throw their entire company at it, and they deliberately pull the right resources into those opportunities when they're deemed to be strategic and important. Another reason that we sell in teams is to leverage executive resources and often to access executive resources in the clients that we work with. Sometimes our team can extend our credibility, and that happens often because we're bringing in someone with deep, rich product or technical expertise, similar to the gentleman who shared with me his frustration of not being engaged early in the sales cycle, or someone who's bringing in industry or customer experience. Today, it is all about understanding the customer's world and how we can add value to that. So oftentimes, this deep industry customer experience makes sense. I work with a company who also sells to hospitals. They have a chief nursing officer, somebody who used to run nursing in a hospital, on their staff that helps them tell the stories and establish credibility with the nurses that they're trying to sell their products and services to. I have another client that's in the education experience, and they have hired a number of ex-teachers and superintendents of public school districts, again, to give them credibility and entree to the types of people that they want to talk to. Another reason that we sell in teams is it can absolutely often shorten our sales cycle. Why? Because if I have the right expertise in the room, in the meeting, when questions arise, there's a higher likelihood that I can address those questions in real time as opposed to have to take the time to go get the answers. So team selling can absolutely shorten the sales cycle in some of these big, complicated deals. And overall, the reason we sell in teams is because it works. When we're selling in teams and organizing and coordinating our efforts effectively, we improve the likelihood that we're going to win the business. And so team selling works for a lots and lots of different reasons. And one other reason that we sell in teams is because we may have to extend our geographic reach. Years ago, I was a global account manager, and I supported the headquarters of a large technology firm and how they interacted with the company that I represented at the time. In addition to myself, there were regional sales reps both in the U.S. that were calling on significant offices of theirs with leadership who had the authority to make purchasing decisions or influence purchasing decisions, as well as people around the globe, whether it was Europe or Asia Pacific, we coordinated our efforts because that made more sense than myself getting on a plane and build all those individual relationships. So very successful when deployed correctly. So what is our role in building the team? And really, as a team leader, we become a player coach. We have to take ownership of directing the team and making sure that everybody is on the same page. And at the same time, we participate as a player in the game. So we're really the player coach in a team selling role for most of the time. When building a team, the number one consideration to start to think about is, what does the customer need? What does the customer need from you in terms of expertise, in terms of relevance, in terms of credibility? And as you build the team, those are some of the key questions that you want to ask. How are you supporting their needs and requirements? It's not about necessarily your need. Well, I need to come in with a posse of people to show that we've got a right resource. No, you want a posse with a purpose that adds value to the customer itself. So what does that mean? Who on my team, in my organization, can help support the process of persuading and positioning our products and services to the customer to be most successful? One of the things that's interesting in a team is you want diversity. You want diversity in role, expertise, and geographic location if that's important. Why? Because a team that it has one skill set and only one skill set is likely not going to be successful. You wouldn't play American football with a team that was comprised of only quarterbacks. You still need somebody to block, tackle, catch, run, etc. So you want diversity in roles, in skills, and expertise. And again, be deliberate in how you select those to support the customer's need. We want those diverse, interesting, unique skill sets, though, to be complementary, to really be coordinated and logical and additive in the customer's experience. And last but not least, as I said, it's not a gang, it's not a group, but it is a posse with a purpose. A team has a collective goal that is understood and agreed upon and working together toward. Oftentimes, I see people working together, but they're not a team. They're just a collection of individuals or a gang of resources. And we want to make sure that we are really approaching it from a coordinated perspective. So what are we looking for when we are selecting the people who go on our team? Well, for some of us, we don't have the ability to select our team. We are told who's our team. Maybe there's some constraints or there's some limitations in the resources. But when you do have the ability to select those team members, we want to make sure that we are selecting the right people that fit with the organizations that we're calling on. Do we have personalities that align with the customer? Do we have resources that line up to the resources that a customer has as they go through that decision-making process? And really think about very specifically what is the purpose of everyone on the team, and as well map that, as I said, to the customer's organization. So one of the ways to think about that is identify how your customers make their buying decisions. Who in your customer is involved in those buying decisions? If an executive is involved in that buying decision, perhaps your team should have a peer or an executive on your team. If you've got primary customer contacts that are managing the relationship As the team leader, that may be your responsibility to develop the deep account experience, the account information, and account management process to develop and close those opportunities. And then beyond that, if there are technical aspects to the decision-making process, and I know that some of you don't sell technology, but your products and services may require an in-depth knowledge of how they work. And that's what I mean by technical resources. You want to bring in those specialists. Many organizations have sales engineers or pre-sales engineers, or as again, those industry specialists that may come in and support them. But really thinking about how those line up makes sense. And building that team with deliberate purpose to achieve those customer objectives in doing business with you. So now that we've kind of thought about who's going to be on our team and why they're going to be on team and the value that we expect them to bring in that role, what we need to do is really start to understand how are we going to start to work together. Well, one of the ways that we start to work together is to create a common vision. The picture I had up earlier was of the Golden State Warriors, and if any of you have been watching for the past week or so the NBA Finals here in the United States, you probably recognize that they are now the champions. That team for sure had a common vision. There was not one person on the team or supporting that team that did not understand what they were trying to accomplish, what they were working toward, and how they were going to be successful. And that starts both from leadership as well as consensus. So as a team lead and a team member, make sure you establish and understand what are the expectations for you. How are you expected to interact with each other? And make sure that's clear. What does that mean? What are the goals? What is the purpose? And how are those outcomes that we expect to achieve with that team defined? And think about those goals, not just in terms of the revenue goals that you have, but describe those goals in terms of the impact you're going to have on your customer. Our objective as a team is to partner with customer XYZ to improve their productivity in their sales organization. And it's very interesting when you start to talk about your vision and your goals about customer success, how it broadens the application of how you can work together. From obviously we have a goal to get the order, but our goal goes beyond that to value realization. And that's how we're selling them. So let's measure and manage our goals and objectives in that same context. And then last but not least, understand how are you going to lead this team without the direct authority. And when I say direct authority, I mean that they don't report to you. You don't have the position authority to be directive in what they're doing. And oftentimes you're fighting for their time. Many people that end up being on a team are resources that are not aligned one-to-one to a sales rep. They're one-to-many. And so they're constantly having to prioritize what they're doing. And if you're leading without authority, you are going to be more successful at getting mind share with some of those scarce resources within your organization. So one of the ways to make sure you have a common vision is to build the strategy together. Most people would rather be a part of a process than a victim of a process. So if you want buy-in to that common vision and buy-in to the strategy of what you're going to try to accomplish, then let's build that together and leverage the collective expertise of all of those people on the team. So what does that mean? Well, we want everybody on the team to take ownership of what that strategy is. and as I said, to take ownership and to be accountable, you often want to be responsible for creating that strategy in the first place. People tend to take greater stakes in implementing that in which they were involved in creating. So again, accountability and responsibility are all part of the empowerment aspect of building that team strategy together. Where we have the differing perspectives and the diversity, we want to work to build consensus. We want to get agreement on, here's our first plan of attack, and that's plan A, but in most cases, we often need a plan B, so let's understand what that plan B is and build that consensus so that there's agreement on the strategy, the execution, and the role in that execution. And then as we do that, as a team leader and a team member, we have to trust and enable our team partners and other team members to do what they are committed to doing. That's called integrity. And we work with people that have integrity, at least I do. Those are the only type of people that I want to work with. People that I can trust that when they agree to something, they will follow through as best they can in every situation. And if we trust and enable them, we can now become a facilitator of executing that strategy rather than the dictator who's directing and pushing what individuals should do. No one wants to be told what to do, but people want to feel empowered to do the right thing. And that's part of how teams work together. There's clearly strong leadership, but there's also strong responsibility and empowerment to move forward. Good ideas can come from everywhere or anywhere, not just from the team leader. So as you do that, we've established the vision, we've involved the team in creating the strategy. Now we want to make sure that everybody understands what their job is and what their role is on the team. Again, not everybody on the field is going to be the quarterback, but everybody on the field has to know what their job is for every play that is called in that game or in that situation. And making sure that in business our teams have that clear of an understanding of what is expected of them is critical. And it's always interesting to me that oftentimes in communication, people assume that if they understand what someone's role and responsibility is, that the other person sitting down the hall from them or across the world from them on that team understands it the same way. So communication becomes critical in testing and confirming that everybody knows what is expected of them. Not only what's expected of them, that they agree to take on those expectations and be held accountable to fulfilling on that. When that is done right, we don't have the issue of duplicated effort. There's always situations that I hear about with clients that it turns out that somebody identified something that needs to be done and acknowledged that it was a good thing to do and went off and did it, only to find out that one of their teammates or colleagues somewhere else had come to the same conclusion. And they're both spending time doing the same thing. And that is not a productive time and use of your resource. It also eliminates confusion. And in times of confusion, oftentimes activities just stop. So if I can eliminate confusion, I can eliminate the probability that my team is inactive because they're not exactly sure what to do, and so they don't want to do something correctly. So part of what we really want to do is, again, reduce this effort, eliminate confusion. And then last but not least, as we define and assign these roles and responsibilities, we know that nothing ever stays the same. We could have a great team meeting, build the strategy, only to find out 30 days later that somebody on our team was promoted to a new role or moved into a new territory, and all of a sudden we've got to bring somebody else onto the team. Or somebody identifies that something has changed at our customer or prospect site. And again, we need to communicate that. So having a clear communication process is key. That might be your CRM, or it might be some other type of regular communication. When I was managing a global team, we had periodic group conference calls just to not only leverage what the data was that we were sharing and what was happening on our collaboration in using technology tools, but also to just make sure that we were having conversations and making sure that everybody was truly on the same page. So one communication method may not be sufficient. You may want to look at an overall communication process that has multiple modes of communication to be most effective. Another key strategy that we know is critical for teams to be successful is we all have to speak the same language and understand the ways to get things done together. And in sales, that's usually together making sure that everybody on the team understands your sales methodology, is trained and conversant in the skills that the salespeople have to be conversant on, so that you can work together and identify together where you're at and where you're going. So you want to identify kind of that uniform approach. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to do everything the exact same way, but we understand what are our best practices that we want to leverage across the team and all the teams in our organization. If we have that common framework, if we have that common process, we are much more prepared to identify ways to discuss opportunities. If we don't have a common framework around how we're looking at opportunities, we are really at risk to not be talking and understanding together exactly where we are. So that also plays into our forecasting opportunities. Oftentimes teams, maybe in an example, organized around an account. There may be multiple opportunities going on in that account. If I am selling products and services that can be delivered to individuals in different geographies or different P&Ls or business units. And at some point, there's likely a forecast that has to be rolled up for that comprehensive account. And I can't do that effectively as a team member if I don't have confidence that everybody on that team who's forecasting deals to come in are looking at those deals the same exact way. It also makes it easier to share data, whether we're sharing common templates, using common forms, using common definitions to make sure that we are working together and on the same page, if you will, as we work together. And last but not least, if we have a common terminology and process, we know and we can define when, where, and how things get escalated when they need to be escalated. We can identify together through that common process, common terminology, common sales methodology and approach, where we need to get more people involved, where we need to add additional resource, where we need to escalate on any area of our business to improve our likelihood for success. Without that common terminology, it's often very difficult to decipher those issues that should be escalated versus those issues that we should be able to handle within the team as it's defined. We talked a little bit about communication, and communication is critical for anything. We know sales, at the end of the day, is 100% a communication process and skill set. Team selling has the second facet to communication that says not only do I have to be effective together in our external communication and our messaging to the prospects that as a team we're selling to, but I also need to make sure that I am effectively keeping everybody up to date on the team with relevant information that everybody or anybody might need to be successful. So what is your communication strategy? Do you have dedicated regular status updates? For me, years ago, it was a periodic conference call. But for you, it might be some other method. I've had organizations that are very centralized, and they might not do a conference call, but they might have a bi-weekly strategy meeting over coffee or over lunch where they get together on that. So the key isn't how you do it, the key is that you do it. And then you determine what's the best method given your team to be successful. And understanding that there will be challenges. We have a customer that was looking at one of our tools, and the customer is a global company. And the people that were involved in the decision-making process for buying this specific tool from us, one of them was in India, one of them was in San Francisco, one of them was in Australia, and one of them was in London. So just trying to figure out which person on that team kind of drew the short straw and had to do the conference call in the middle of the night took a ridiculous amount of time to negotiate. So you want to really understand that and understand what's the best way to do that. And just like anything, whenever we have communication, we want to follow up and confirm that communication. So if I'm the team leader, I'm either going to take responsibility to document what happens in those regular status updates and make sure that everybody has them so that if and when there are changes on the team, somebody can quickly come up to speed with what's going on. For many of you, that might be an account planning document. That account planning document might be inside of your CRM. It might be outside of your CRM. But in many team selling opportunities, the vision, the strategy, the roles and responsibilities are created through an account planning process that's robust enough to identify this and these key areas and then provide the mechanisms to make sure that everybody else stays on the same page. So we've talked some about how you build a team, why you build a team, what needs to happen for that team to be successful. Now let's talk about how do we figure out if this team is actually making a difference. Well, just like anything in sales, we want to be able to measure the results and manage the processes and activities that deliver the results. So we talk about what are those metrics that you need to identify to be successful and know that that team is doing what you expect it to do. Team selling is very expensive for many of our clients. Now, the return is great when the team is effective and wins the elephant of the deal and lands the large client and has that global support to mitigate the risk that there's a single point of failure in an account and all of those good things. But if you've got a team of 10, 5, even 3 key resources going at an opportunity, you can all of a sudden start to see how expensive that investment in sales is. And if we're making that investment, which is the right thing to do, and is the long-term approach for many of our clients, we need to be able to measure those results. As we focus on results, one of the things that makes teams so effective is how they celebrate success and recognize and reward stellar performance. And again, when we are leading without authority, we might not have the ability to say, hey, here's a bonus or a spiff or a trip. But what can we do to celebrate and recognize the results? Well, here's a couple of ideas. I always think if you can thank your team members in public, that's great. What does that mean? Maybe it is a thank you message to an executive. Maybe it's a thank you message that is actually delivered in some sort of a meeting or a public forum. Maybe it's a note or a success story that you can get shared with your clients. But really find out different ways that you can thank your team members in the public, broader context of your company. And recognize all the unique contributions. Clearly, there will be some people on your team that will stand out likely as significant contributors to the successful results, but everybody on the team participates in that. I have years ago, I worked with a client who's a Major League Baseball team, and they happened to win the World Series at the time that I was working with them. Everybody in the front office of that organization, from the person who answered the phones to the person who worked with the vendors in the stadium, was recognized as contributing to the success of the players on the team. So it's not just the people that are visibly driving the results, it's all that supporting cast of people that we want to thank and make sure that we're recognizing their contribution. And the reality is sometimes it's the little things that we can thank that go a long way. Ken Blanchard, I think, says it best in some of his leadership materials, is catch them doing something right and recognize that right away. So all the little things and the big things that your teams are going through can be helpful and suitable for reward and recognition. Now, one of the things that I said I was going to talk about today is different ways that you can influence without authority. And this sometimes is a challenge for some team members. Maybe myself as an account manager have people on the team that are my boss's boss, or at a level in the organization that's different than mine, or don't report to me, don't even report to the same boss that I have. So I can't even use my boss to help influence them. So we need to think about ways that we can influence and direct those resources when we don't even have the authority to kind of tell them just what to do. Can't I just tell them what to do and they'll do it? Wouldn't it be great if it worked that way? But it's usually not that simple. So where does power come from in an organization? Well, certainly power often comes from our position. If I'm your manager, I'm your boss, I probably have the right and the ability and the authority to direct what you're doing. But if I'm not, I might not have the authority to direct what you're doing. So I have to build consensus and get you to do what I want you to do, even if I can't tell you exactly what to do. Well, as I started to think about this, isn't this exactly what sales is? We influence our prospects every day and facilitate them making a decision that aligns with our goals. And we don't have the authority to just buy it. Just tell them to do it. Just sign here. We have to influence without authority. So think of how you approach your sales. Do you understand the personal motivation of everybody on your team? Are you tapping into that and aligning to that and leveraging that in your communication? Because since your power won't come from position, it's either going to come from the expertise you bring to the team or the relationship that you build with your team members. We all want to work with people who respect us, who value what we do, and how can we do that? Well, it's very simple. Just like in sales, we're going to listen more than we're going to talk. We're going to focus on understanding and listen to understand as opposed to listen to respond. We are going to look for ways to build win-win outcomes as opposed to win-lose outcomes. We're going to reduce resistance through agreement. Another technique that we often do in sales, we agree with them and then redirect and redefine and deflect to expand on that agreement. So when we resist, we tend to build walls. When we agree, we tend to go hand in hand down the path together. And a third technique is, again, understanding and uncovering that personal motivation. Oftentimes, as the account manager for sales, we're very clear on what our motivation is. Maybe it's to make a lot of money. Maybe it's to get promoted or get to the next level in my career, or have a big win on my resume and feed my ego. Whatever it is, most salespeople are pretty clear on what their individual motivation is. But often, you're going to have people on your team that aren't wired like salespeople. They may not even be commission-based. So you need to understand what's important to them so we can connect to it. I heard a story the other day of somebody who was working in the financial services industry, and they had a bunch of loan officers and reporting to them. And the facilitator was telling this story that the team leader or manager of these loan officers was really frustrated because one of the people on his team who he thought had unbelievable raw talent and ability was not choosing to do the right things to be successful. And he sat down with that individual and he found out that that individual, for whatever reason, did not want to overachieve because he was, I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but he was not motivated to make more money than his father had made before him. It actually turned him off. Probably in the wrong job. But once the manager understood that, he could find different ways to motivate him. He was trying to motivate him with bonuses and spiffs and cash incentives. Those didn't go away. The guy still was going to have a robust comp plan, but he did find something that he could connect to that was important to him. So again, we can't push the motivation button if we don't understand what it is. Everybody's motivated. They're just motivated for their reasons, and their reasons may be different than yours. So let's recap some of the successful team strategies that we've talked about as we leave this. And certainly if you have any questions or want to share any success stories or comments on this, please use your question and answer panel, and I'll address those as we kind of get ready to wrap up today. So what are successful team selling strategies? Well, first and foremost, for those of you that are on the role that have the role and responsibility of being the team leader, be that coordinator and be accountable for all of the things that we just talked about: vision, strategy, communication, and motivation. And make sure that all of that is understood by everybody on the team. Build the team with the customer in mind. And think about who on your company, and in some cases, it might even be a partner or somebody in your ecosystem that doesn't actually report to your company that might help you. But think about those resources that can help you be successful with that individual customer. A team for one customer may not be the same exact team that you want to put on a different customer for any number of reasons. The customer may have different needs. As you do that, identify the appropriate resources and be purposeful and deliberate in picking those team members. What's their role? What do they do that's additive to the other team members that we have and the contributions that we can leverage? Effective teams, the sum of the parts is greater than the individual components. Effective teams mean 1 + 1 = 3. And that's how we want to make sure we get those appropriate resources in there. We talked quite a bit about vision. If we're not all focused on the same vision, we are likely not to be able to execute on that vision. We might get lucky, but we want to replace getting lucky with being good. Use the team to develop a strategy that's owned, a strategy that's shared, because when that happens, the team members are accountable, empowered, and responsible for its execution. In that process, clear roles and responsibilities. Eliminate duplicate effort. We don't need the team full of quarterbacks. We need team members that know what they're supposed to do and how they're going to add value. Set the goals. And the goals are, let's face it, in sales, our goals are always somehow tied to a number, a result, a revenue, a quota, whatever it is. But also set the goals to the activities that will lead us to those objectives, to those goals, and measure them and manage them to be successful. Last two things, communicate regularly. Oftentimes you can't over communicate. Just because we said it doesn't mean they heard it. And communication is a process, not an event. And last but not least, celebrate success. Celebrate milestones, celebrate individual contributions, celebrate collectively as the team, and celebrate and recognize wherever you can. Catch everyone doing something right. So what are we going to do? What am I going to ask you to do as a result of this? Well, I'm assuming you're on the line because something about the team selling topic resonated with you. Based on what we saw early on, everybody that responded to my first question was either a team member or a team leader. And so as you start thinking about how you might put this together, I'll just challenge you with one thing. If you keep managing the team, your team, and participating in your teams the way you've always done it, you will get the same results. But if you want to get different results or elevate those results, you might want to look at some of the dynamics and tactics that we talked about and put them to work. And if you're going to do that, then here's what I'd suggest how you get started. Look at your current team. Look at the approach. Do you have a good communication strategy? Do you have the right people on the team? Common vision, strategy. Does everybody understand their role and responsibility? Because as you do that, you can start to really assess the team dynamic. You may have the best team, and that's great. Now you can ratchet up incrementally maybe some of the things that we talked about to be successful. You may realize that there's somebody that should be on your team that isn't, or somebody that is on your team that shouldn't. But really assess and understand what you've got and where you're going to go. To do that, as a team and as a team leader, you need to decide what you're going to do differently if you're going to do something differently, and then put that into practice. But my suggestion is that you really be very careful of that diagnosis and understanding so that your prescriptive changes will be additive and directive for that team. Apply some of the principles that we have today. Develop a process to incorporate the vision, the strategy, the roles, the communication, and the recognition on a regular basis to drive the business forward and deliver the results. And then last but not least, execute. The reality is, we all know today, success doesn't happen by accident. It happens when hard work, preparation, and the right resources come together. And that is the whole genesis of team selling. So let me share a couple of things with you, and we'll certainly go into the questions that we have here. Happy to answer any of the questions that you might have, and it looks like we definitely have a few. So first and foremost, let's see. If you don't have the authority to build a team, what do you do? Well, if you don't have the authority to build the team, I would want to talk to my manager or someone that does have the authority to influence some of that, and ask what you can do together to change the current situation. So I would go to somebody who has the power, has the authority, or might have access to that. Here is an interesting question. I understand that the team goal of sharing for growing revenues and making sure you have that common vision, but what if the organization has different classifications of revenue that people are measured differently? Sometimes it seems that the team's productivity is impacted by the fact that we don't have alignment on goals and objectives. Now, that's an interesting question, because by definition, you're kind of describing a dysfunctional situation. That said, it's the reality that we live in. So I would try to then look at how you can reshape the common vision and the common goals to encompass the metrics and the measurements that everybody on the team, what is common, and find that common ground. And if you can't find that common ground to make sure that you have that common vision, again, that's where I would start escalating that conversation to management. So for example, years ago when I was managing that team, I worked with a product specialist. He was somebody who had deep product knowledge to a product that we didn't sell all the time. So the sales rep, myself, didn't have the ability to establish that deep product knowledge. And how he was measured was different than mine. And it was kind of crazy, right? You'd think, okay, you're both salespeople, you're trying to grow your product, and I'm trying to grow the overall revenue. But when we realized that we had a complete misalignment of objectives, we actually together went to our bosses together and said, okay, now how do we reconcile this? Because he's being asked to do something here, I'm being asked to do something there, and there's no alignment. And the reality was, at least in that situation, the sales leader didn't even realize that the misalignment of that was causing problems in their organization and creating confusion on what this is. A lot of questions on where will I find these slides. These slides will absolutely be available to you on valueselling.com. They'll be posted this afternoon. And if you look in your GoToWebinar, if you want them before, you'll notice that we have the handout, which is the webinar deck. You can download that PDF right here from GoToWebinar and have it immediately. So let's talk about where we're going next. Thank you for your questions. If I didn't get a chance to answer it, I will do my best to answer it in email, one-on-one, or via our LinkedIn group. From that so you could join our LinkedIn group and see the answers there. Next month, we're going to be talking about forecasting. How do we better forecast, more accurately forecast, and how is forecasting correlated to our sales performance and potentially the internal credibility that we bring to the company. Last but not least, please join us online, join the conversation, like us on Facebook, tweet at Value Selling your comments, your feedback on today's webinar. Join our LinkedIn group and join the conversation there. You will be getting a survey at the end of today's webinar, so please take a moment and give us some feedback there as we go through this. And then last but not least, please find me personally on LinkedIn, and should any questions, comments, or specific situations that you want to discuss come up, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. We would love to have you. So I hope that your participation today added value to you. And I look forward to seeing you on our call again in July. And in the meantime, go out and make a difference, have fun, drive results, and enjoy the team that you're a part of. Thank you. Julie.